Just then, Kettle emerged from the smoke, brushing dust from his shoulders, scratching his head with a sheepish look. "Wait, just hear me out." Marsuria's eyes widened in disbelief. He was still alive. The elder gasped. "Impossible. He took a direct hit from Her Majesty and still stands." From her high vantage point, Marsuria's voice cut through the air. "Are you yet another powerful enemy come to destroy us?" Her brows furrowed, her words dripping with disdain. "Humans truly are a vile and dishonorable race." She raised her bow with solemn grace and declared, "I am the queen of the Leaf Clan, the clan whose leaves change with the seasons." Her eyes narrowed, her voice sharp as a blade. "Human." Marsuria Hashian Karusha raised her bow, her voice firm and unwavering. "You will pay dearly for daring to harbor ambition against us." Kettle froze, bewildered. What the hell is she even saying? He stood there stiff as a statue, dumbfounded. Is she seriously not going to let me talk? We are clearly speaking the same language, so why is she acting like she can't hear me? Is she ignoring me on purpose, or are relations between humans and elves really that bad? After a moment of hesitation, his resolve hardened. Forget it. No other choice now. His brow furrowed, his pupils dilating with fierce determination. "One thing I learned in the frozen wastes: if they won't listen, you beat them until they have no choice but to listen." Marsuria knocked another arrow, drew back her bowstring, and loosed it with lethal precision. Her gaze followed the shaft as it cut through the air, a streak of light screaming toward its mark. The arrow surged forward like a feral beast lunging for Kettle's throat. But Kettle showed no fear, no hesitation. He clenched his fist tight and charged straight at it. With one decisive punch, he struck the beastly arrow head-on. The clash was violent. Two forces collided, raw, chaotic power locking against her refined elven magic. Kettle's strength churned like a vortex, grinding away at Marsuria's attack, ripping through it with sheer destructive will. Her eyes went wide, stunned beyond words. She could not believe what she was seeing. Even Kettle himself faltered for a heartbeat, momentarily surprised at the outcome. Then came the backlash. A reckless surge of Marsuria's power spiraled out of control, tearing through the surroundings in a violent wave. From her elevated perch, the queen was blasted off her feet, crashing to the ground with a painful impact. Kettle winced, staring down at her. Maybe I should have held back a little. Marsuria's face had gone pale, her expression frozen in shock. Humiliation burned hot in her chest. In just one brief exchange, I already know the truth: this man is terrifying. At least transcendent level strength. But why would someone that powerful appear here, of all places? Her voice trembled with urgency as she called out, "Everyone, evacuate this place immediately." The elves hesitated, their eyes wide. "Your Highness." "Go," she roared, her tone sharp and commanding. "All of you, now." Her subjects obeyed at once, scattering in every direction, running with frantic speed to escape the battlefield. Left alone with Kettle, Marsuria glared at him, venom in her voice. "Human, I acknowledge your strength. But no matter how strong you are, you will never achieve your goal." Kettle, however, did not look the least bit fazed. He even sighed, scratching his head. "No, really, I just wanted to talk. How the hell did everything get this messy?" Marsuria's eyes hardened as she closed them, whispering words of invocation. Her voice carried the weight of ancient magic. "You who burn within the abyssal dark, reveal yourself. Resurrected being with horns, bearer of the purest flame, arise." Her eyes snapped open, blazing with power. She thrust her hand skyward, summoning a presence that warped the very air around her. In a blaze of light and heat, the creature manifested. A Figo, its very body radiating scorching, unrelenting power. Kettle's jaw dropped. Holy shit, a summoning. The beast's molten form towered before him, radiating primal heat. He could not help but mutter, eyes wide in awe. Damn! In the frozen wastes, everything was monstrous and twisted. At least this one looks kinda like the stuff from myths. Though, honestly, still ugly as hell. Seeing the ferocity of Figo, he could not help but mutter in awe. The creature before him looked like a bull, its massive horns blazing with fire. His eyes sparkled as he whispered in amazement. This was exactly the kind of spirit one would expect from true fantasy. Marsuria Hashian Karusha's voice rang out, sharp and commanding, "Figo, destroy the enemy standing before you." The beast turned its gaze on him, then muttered in a low, almost reluctant tone. Summoning contracts are nothing but trouble. They only bring misfortune. Figo, high fire spirit. That made her snap in frustration. Silence, she barked, furious that her own summon dared speak out of turn. Still, her pride swelled as she looked upon the fiery spirit. Figo, the keeper of fire within his horns, a spirit this strong, this ancient, this proud, was never one she could summon under normal circumstances. Only with the help of another clan had she barely managed to forge a contract. She never expected she would have to call upon him like this. With no hesitation, her voice rang out firm and serious. Fulfill the contract, Figo. Its heavy steps began to echo as it advanced. So the contract is to kill the human before me. Its eyes grew cold, piercing straight through him, and it answered its own thought. That is right. To Figo, the man before it did not look human at all. In its eyes, he was a demon. And it could not help but wonder, was this truly a mortal? A majestic bull cloaked in fire stood like a living inferno, its massive body engulfed in brilliant golden-orange flames that blazed like a miniature sun bursting across the battlefield. The fire did not just consume its muscular frame. It radiated outward, casting a glow so intense it transformed the air around it into a scene both otherworldly and terrifying. Not far away, a young man stood frozen, hands clasped together as though in reverence, eyes wide and mouth slightly open in sheer awe. He did not dare blink, afraid that if he looked away for even a second, the vision before him would vanish. Incredible, he breathed. A summoned spirit beast, this is what a true fantasy world feels like. Before he could recover from his astonishment, a deep, cold voice thundered from afar. A human has trespassed into our domain. His entire body went rigid, hands still locked before his chest, confusion storming through his mind. The spirit beast's molten gold eyes glowed like liquid lava, mysterious runes igniting across its hide as tiny embers lifted into the air around it. It lowered its head, its voice resonant with authority and contempt. A wretched human dares covet the race of nature itself. I have decided I will reduce you to ashes until not even dust remains. The young man just stood there stiffly, eyes wide and blank, looking for all the world like someone thrown into a play without ever having read the script. His expression was a mixture of bewilderment and absurdity. The spirit beast's eyes blazed blood red, twin embers roaring to life in the storm of fire. Flames surged across its horns, down its back, and coiled around its legs like molten rivers. With a thunderous lift, its colossal body rose from the ground, leaving scorched, cracked trails where its hooves had been. From the skies, it twisted within a storm of fire and thunder, creating a violent cyclone of flames. The golden markings etched across its body flared like ancient seals, unlocking a destructive power long sealed away. It roared, lowering its massive horns toward its target. Fire erupted in rhythm with its steps, and its blazing eyes no longer resembled sight, they were blades, honed to shred anything that dared defile its territory. Amid the blinding brilliance, the young man stood there dazed, his face lit by both wonder and disbelief at what was unfolding. Then came the impact. The ground quaked violently as fire and stone exploded upward, smoke billowing into the sky. The detonation ripped through the land as if to erase every trace of its existence, leaving nothing but ruin and ash in its wake. The shockwave nearly tore Karusha apart. By pure reflex, she shielded her face with her arm, her hair whipping wildly, her clothes snapping in the fierce gale, skin tight from the crushing pressure. Her breath came unevenly at first, but gradually steadied. Lowering her trembling hand, she lifted her head, eyes straining through the heavy dust cloud toward the center of the blast. And then through the haze a shape emerged. Two figures locked in a clash, their silhouettes carving a stark image against the ruin. The young man still stood there, unshaken, not blasted away, not even wounded. With a single hand, he held the fiery horn of the beast in an iron grip. The colossal spirit was completely halted, its charge broken, its horn pinned as if nailed into the earth. It could not advance. It could not retreat. Its golden eyes widened in disbelief. The young man tilted his head slightly and smiled. Honestly, it is better this way. A beast is easier to deal with. As soon as those words left his lips, his presence shifted. The air around him rippled under a sudden pressure. His free hand clenched into a fist. Muscle shifting beneath his shirt, veins flaring for a fleeting instant. In the very next heartbeat, he swung. His punch thundered forward, carrying the weight of his words. I do not mind beating it to death with my bare hands. Karusha's eyes widened, her gaze shaken in a fleeting instant. She could not find the words, only raw astonishment etched across her face as she witnessed his counterattack sudden, decisive, and devastating. The punch landed squarely atop Fiego's head, and the force detonated outward in a shockwave that tore through the air, blasting the earth and stone around them into shrapnel. A pillar of fire erupted like a volcanic eruption, a blazing red flare that swallowed everything in sight. From the point of impact, waves of force roared outward like a storm of fire, shredding the forest behind them for miles. A colossal column of light pierced the heavens, exploding upward from the heart of the earth as though the gods themselves had unleashed their fury. The blast mushroomed outward, devouring the seas and sky alike in its terrible sweep. The explosion thundered like the world's end, and a sea of fire ignited as if the sun itself had fallen upon the land. Trees, stone, and soil alike were flung to oblivion, and everything nearby dissolved into a blazing ruin of chaos. Karusha cried out in terror, throwing her arms over her face, her eyes wide with horror as though the entire world had collapsed before her. Her scream echoed like the soundtrack to an unfolding apocalypse. Through the darkness, Kettle's eyes blazed violet, searing with a light that pierced the soul of his enemy. His coat whipped wildly, and the aura of bloodlust surged from him like an inferno. She collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud, her back hunched, her body coated in ash and dust. Her shoulders trembled, her hand pressed into the still quaking earth for support. What? Before her stretched a wasteland of ruin. The earth lay split and torn, the spirit beast gone without a trace, leaving only swirling smoke and dust as if life had never existed there at all. Amid the devastation, he stood tall and unyielding. She gasped, her voice breaking. Impossible. Kettle began to walk toward her, each step heavy yet unshakably firm, echoing through the wreckage. She remained seated on the ground, her dazed eyes staring through the haze, unable to tell dream from reality anymore. Her head bowed, her shoulders trembling, her voice hoarse with exhaustion but laced with sincerity. Please. She lowered her head further, hair falling like a curtain over her dirt-streaked face, and her voice quavered. Please spare my people. He stopped directly before her, his gaze falling like a shadow that pressed upon the air itself. Silence lingered for a heartbeat before his voice rumbled deep and steady. I am not your enemy, elf. Her entire body froze at his words, her shoulders twitching as if struck. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She slowly lifted her head, staring at him as if she could not trust her own ears. What did you say? After all the clash and doubt, the truth broke through. He truly was not their foe. Karusha placed a hand over her chest, her gaze softening, heavy with remorse. Her voice trembled with guilt. Forgive us, human. We judged too quickly. She clutched at her chest tighter, as if trying to cage in the guilt surging within her. Her face lowered again, too ashamed to meet his eyes, not even with a glance. To have mistaken the savior of her tribe's child for a kidnapper, it was unforgivably disgraceful. He stood there, arms crossed over his chest, the corner of his mouth lifting into a wry, tentative smile. It is all right, I understand, he said softly. You mentioned being pursued by humans, right? Still, it is a little disheartening that none of you ever tried to listen to me. She lifted her head slightly, eyes still cautious but tinged with curiosity and confusion. Her voice was soft and hoarse. You really are not one of those hunting us. He met her gaze, his own eyes not cold, but genuinely curious. A light breeze stirred the hem of his cloak as he replied evenly, This is my first time meeting an elf. There are no elves in the White Snow region. She blinked, hesitating as she repeated, still wary, White Snow region. Then, as if remembering something, she added, the gray barbarian of the White Snow. He paused slightly at her words, then answered calmly, That is the name the outsiders gave me. The girl straightened, fists clenched, disbelief evident in her expression. Impossible. We thought no human could survive there. She lowered her head, voice laced with worry. If you could leave the White Snow region, does that mean others could as well? He remained still for a moment, his legs planted firmly on the cracked earth, unmoving. A soft breath escaped him, blending almost with the wind, before he spoke, low and steady. Who knows? But I do not think so. Not everyone can leave as I did. Kettle sank into his thoughts. The white snow region had its own rules. Even powerful creatures like serpents could not break them. For some reason, he had been granted a way out through what was called a mission. Standing silently, his eyes fixed on the space ahead, as though seeing through the haze and the memories. He concluded, I am likely an exceptionally rare exception. Karusha exhaled softly, the tension in her shoulders easing. Amid the ruin and swirling dust, her voice floated like a gentle breeze. Then, we are fortunate. Suddenly recalling something, he asked, a trace of embarrassment in his expression as he lightly scratched his cheek, a forced smile tugging at his lips. By the way, is your spirit beast all right, that fiery bull? I may have split it in half. She braced herself, moving slowly as dust cascaded around her while she stood. Don't worry, she said. Spirit beasts are creatures of nature. When defeated, they simply return to the spirit realm. His quiet, mumbled question, almost to himself, was like speaking aloud to her. Spirit beast, huh? Fully upright now, she stood with the poise of a warrior reclaiming her dignity after battle. Her deep eyes met his with unwavering sincerity. I apologize for the trouble I caused. If there is anything you need, within my ability, I will grant it. He seemed only half-focused, following a separate line of thought. Spirit beast. Huh, he murmured, one hand resting on his chin, eyes half intent. Half distant, head tilting slightly as if weighing something. Then, could someone who is not an elf form a contract with a spirit beast? She hesitated slightly, her gaze wavering before quickly looking away. Her voice remained calm, but a subtle tension lingered beneath the surface, almost unspoken. That is nearly impossible, I think. She raised a hand to her chin, eyes narrowing as if reconsidering her own denial. A brief silence passed, then her voice rose gently. Of course. If a human is deeply attuned to nature, they might form a contract with a spirit beast. He nodded lightly, calm and unperturbed. Then, the chances are still very low. She fell silent, lips pressing together, her expression darkening. After a moment, she lifted her gaze toward him, no longer avoiding his eyes but meeting him quietly. Her voice lowered, thoughtful yet carrying a hint of cautious hope. If you truly wish to form a contract with a spirit beast, try going to Elfo Sagrado. He immediately asked, intrigued, Elfo Sagrado. She lowered her eyes slightly, speaking slowly with deep reverence. It is where the gods of the elves reside. The holiest sanctuary of our people. The elf holy land. She paused briefly before continuing. There, you may have a chance. His face lit up like a child hearing the promise of an adventure. His eyes sparkled, lips curving into an excited grin. Pointing at himself, he asked in disbelief, someone like me, a human, can enter? She extended her hand toward him, each motion deliberate, as though the weight of a monumental decision rested in every gesture. Her voice carried softly through the lingering dust. Steady and measured. Normally, no. But with my introduction, you may. I will give you a map, keep it secret, just for yourself. She raised her hand, palm turning outward, and soft streams of light began to gather, glimmering like moonlight, coalescing into a small, swirling ribbon of radiance. She pondered silently, the elf sanctuary, Elfo Sagrado. A place every scholar of elf lore dreams of. Yet she hesitated. Knowing that for elves, any human approaching that sacred site is in grave danger. To protect something more precious than life itself, elves have never revealed its location to outsiders. Slowly, a crystal formed in the center of her palm, emanating a warm, brilliant glow that was bright but not blinding, as if containing fire within. Its surface was smooth, the swirling reds and oranges within dancing like a living flame. She silently reminded herself, still, I want to trust him. Karusha held her hand out toward him, palm open. Take this. He reached out gently, fingertips brushing hers where the crystal shone. I accept. Thank you, he said. Her voice grew solemn, formal, carrying both weight and warning. Of course, even if you reach it, the gods of our people will surely test you. In her mind, a shadowy image flickered. The supreme deity, tall and imposing, cloaked in the light of the deep forest, eyes piercing through the soul. A soft smile softened her features as she spoke sincerely. But for you, I do not think it will be a problem. I wish you luck. He replied simply, thank you. At that moment, a sudden breeze swept through, rustling the ruined treetops and brushing her hair, sending her long locks streaming like a quiet ribbon amid the devastation. She introduced herself with solemnity, voice carrying through the air. I am the queen of the Leaf Clan, the ones whose leaves turn brown in autumn. Marsuria Hashian Karusha. And your name? He offered a small, sincere smile, free of arrogance. I am Kettle. Kettle, the gray barbarian of the White Snow region. After the brief farewell, silence settled over the space, swallowing the words left unspoken. Then, a sharp, dry sound cut through the quiet as his foot slammed forcefully into the cracked earth. His body tensed slightly, then suddenly leaned forward, poised like an arrow drawn on a bowstring. Instantly, he sprang into motion, cutting through the air, eyes sharp and cold. Ahead lay a dense, shadowed forest, so thick it seemed to swallow every shred of light. The canopy intertwined overhead like a massive vaulted ceiling. He launched himself from the ground, his form slicing through the trees like a projectile. Only fleeting shadows flickered between shafts of sunlight and the layers of leaves. Moving with the lightness of wind, yet every motion carried decisive force and authority. At the border of Barhan in the kingdom of Jahent, startled shouts echoed through the otherwise quiet morning. What is that? What is happening? One guard trembled as he gripped his weapon tightly, eyes glued to the violently shifting treeline. I do not know. Something's coming, he stammered. The captain of the Barhan guards immediately stepped forward, bellowing with authority. Sound the alarm. Rally all sentries at once. From the forest, clouds of dust and debris spiraled like crashing waves. Something was moving at an incredible speed. Its shape was obscured. But the wind it ripped through shredded the air. Dust rose violently, and each step thudded against the ground like rolling thunder. The atmosphere compressed, thick and suffocating. Through the swirling haze, a figure gradually emerged. His stride was deliberate and resolute, each footfall striking the earth with a heavy, echoing rhythm that resonated through the tense air. Breaking through the dust, the familiar silhouette came into view. A man with slightly disheveled silver hair, eyes sharp and cold, glinting like blades through the haze. The guards froze almost in unison. Hands clutching weapons began to tremble, cold sweat running down their spines, eyes locked on the advancing figure. None dared move, none dared command. One of them, throat tight and voice hoarse, finally managed to croak out a single, choked word, you. Kettle greeted the guards cheerfully. So, you are the guards, huh? Pleasure to meet you. The guards, however, remained in their defensive stances just as they had been when he first appeared. They stared at him intently, whispering among themselves in trembling voices, was that huge commotion just now caused by this guy? One of the guards muttered under his breath as he eyed Kettle, gray ash hair. His voice faltered more and more, and a scar on his chest. Impossible. Suddenly realizing the identity of the man before them, the guard exclaimed sharply, the gray ash outlaw. As soon as the words left his mouth, Kettle began to step slowly toward the group of guards. Seeing this, the guards immediately shouted, stop right there, one more step and we will attack. Kettle remained calm, speaking in a firm, serious tone. I would appreciate it if you could stay calm. I am not your enemy. The lead guard still pointed his spear at him, cautiously asking, what is it that you want from us? Without haste, Kettle slowly raised his right hand and then pointed toward the fortress before him. The guards could not help but be taken aback. They followed his gesture with their eyes, staring at the fortress behind him, murmuring in doubt, the fortress. Kettle then spoke boldly, I wish to enter your territory. Hearing the stranger's words, the guards were clearly surprised. Kettle leaned a hand to his chin and continued, I only intend to pass through, but if possible, I would like to stay for a while. I am not sure for how long. Immediately, they asked for more information. You plan to stay a while. And your name is? Name's Kettle, he replied succinctly. The guard eyed him skeptically and asked, do you have someone vouching for you, or any identification? Kettle shook his head lightly, I have nothing like that. Then he remembered the instructions from Kalasha. Thank you, Kettle. If you leave later, present this token if you wish to seek out House Akasha. Kettle pulled the token from his pocket and placed it on the table, saying to the guard, will this serve as confirmation? The guard looked at the object curiously. What is this? Kettle answered promptly, the crest of House Akasha. I received it from someone of that bloodline. Hesitant, the guard asked, House Akasha. The merchant family from the kingdom of Denian, right? Observing the crest, he continued, that house visited the White Zone a few years back. You know them, then, lately, they have been rising in prominence. Since the new head took over, they have expanded rapidly. Kettle nodded and asked, so this can serve as identification. The guard leaned on the table, lowering his voice, doesn't look fake, but still hard to verify. This is not part of our kingdom, this is Jahent. He placed the crest back on the table and spoke slowly, even if it can't be fully verified, it is still useful. Alright, you may enter but with conditions. Kettle repeated, conditions. The guard straightened, voice serious. Verification is required. We must ensure you are not dangerous, a team effort. At present, 3 others are also seeking entry. The condition, you must work together to clear a dungeon near our territory. Kettle nodded, forming a team is the condition, that is easier than I thought. Kettle cheerfully accepted the conditions, saying, all right, I accept, but there is one more condition. The guard immediately replied, once the dungeon is cleared, I want you to report in detail everything that happened inside. Kettle laughed heartily and, with a knowing smile, revealed the guard's unspoken plan, I understand. Seems you were not fully aware of their identities and had to observe each other. So you are using this opportunity to filter out any suspicious ones. Not a bad strategy. Actually, quite clever. The guard eyed him with suspicion. That is not all. Are you really a Mandi? Without hesitation, Kettle answered confidently, yes. I am a Mandi. The guard paused, deep in thought. I always thought Mandi were a foolish kind. But you are the first one to make me reconsider. After a moment, he said, all right, that is enough talking. Let us go. Nearby, a paladin sighed, speaking gruffly, even if it is the law, I have to go into a dungeon with a bunch of pickpockets like rats. He continued, clearly irritated, Paladin Alessandro Tiranu, at your service. From a bench beside him, a thief scowled and snapped, you got a problem, old man. Are you picking a fight because you lost all your money to a thief like me? The thief introduced himself, Cassin Hark. No sooner had he finished than the paladin shouted, you insolent brat, how dare you insult a paladin? Cassin responded mockingly, paladin your head. Paladin nowadays wears armor like that, if you were truly a paladin, you would not have dragged your face here. You are just a wandering paladin, are not you? Then, sneering, Cassin continued, you are nothing but a drifter, just like me. Seeing the paladin remain silent, Cassin taunted further, Tiranu. What kind of ridiculous name is that? The paladin could no longer contain himself and drew his sword, threatening to strike, you insolent brat. Cassin laughed scornfully, challenging him, want to test your skills, think that tattered armor of yours can stop me. Immediately, the two clashed in a fierce, unending duel. After a while, the paladin began to struggle against Cassin's youthful strength, his sword hand trembling from the effort. Suddenly, a voice interjected, I strongly request that both of you stop. Hearing the stranger, the two combatants froze and turned toward the newcomer. Before them stood a timid young priest, bowing slightly, unable to meet their gaze. Do I really have to clean this dungeon with these two? Will it even be safe? She was Priest Hayes of Kolocha. She glanced around, thinking to herself, the dungeon requires at least 4 people. Someone else should arrive soon. She nervously watched the floor, waiting for the last member to appear. A sound suddenly made her snap out of her unease. The guard announced loudly to everyone in the waiting room, the final member has arrived. Cassin laughed, I hope this one's normal. Let us see. At that moment, Kettle slowly stepped into the waiting room. The moment Kettle stepped in, everyone in the waiting room could not help but be astonished by his towering figure. He scanned the room with a cheerful glance and called out, his voice bright with excitement. So, you are the ones, my teammates. The elderly paladin muttered under his breath, he is huge. The young priest gasped in surprise, is that really a human? Even the thief Cassin frowned as he looked at Kettle, muttering to himself, what kind of pressure is this? Kettle beamed warmly at everyone, greeting them enthusiastically. The guard spoke again, all right, introduce yourselves. I will step back for now. Kettle cheerfully raised his voice. Then let us start with introductions. I am Kettle, a Mandi. He then turned to the young thief nearby. Surprised by the sudden question, the boy hesitated before replying, I am Kassan Hark. I am a thief. At that, the paladin spoke in a serious tone, I am a paladin. Alessandro Tyrannus, a paladin. Kettle, curious, asked him, can you wield holy power? The elderly man stammered, visibly flustered. Normally, yes, but I am an exception. Actually, I cannot use it. Kettle nodded thoughtfully, I see. Then the priest timidly introduced herself, I serve a god of deceit and illusions. I am Hayes, a priest of Kolocha. Kettle responded warmly, a priest, very nice to meet you. He then asked, even as a priest, your identity is not very clear. She explained in a hesitant voice, the god I serve is Kolocha, the deity of trickery and illusions. Not exactly a god with a good reputation. Kettle nodded quietly, I see. The guard unexpectedly returned to the room, startling everyone. He called out, if you are ready, let us go. Kettle and the paladin both fell silent, contemplating the challenge ahead, while the priest and Kassan exchanged worried glances. After some movement, the lead guard signaled to the group behind him, we have arrived. Kettle raised his brow in mild surprise at the sight before him. Another guard announced, this is the entrance to the dungeon. He continued, the dungeon has 3 floors. We will be facing immortal monsters. Hearing the mission details, confidence spread across Kettle's face. Clear the dungeon and bring back the emblem, he said firmly. Kettle turned to Kassan and said, all right, let us start planning our strategy. Can you explain it? Startled by the sudden attention, Kassan hesitated, why yes, Lord Kettle, and Kettle immediately cut him off. You can drop the formalities, we are traveling together, are not we? Kassan rested his hand on his chin, thinking for a moment before nodding. All right, then. He then laid out a strategy for the group. Kettle and the paladin will lead the front line. I will scout for traps, and the priest stays in the rear, using her divine power to support the battle. How does that sound? Kettle responded immediately, I understand. Sounds good. Then he raised his voice, firm and commanding, all right, let us move out. The 4 of them cautiously advanced deeper into the dungeon, moving carefully while keeping an eye on their surroundings. The oppressive darkness weighed heavily on the priest, who thought to herself, it is too dark. I can't see anything. Kassan, meanwhile, scanned the surroundings, frowning, no ordinary traps or mechanisms. Everything looks normal, almost. Too normal. Suddenly, he remembered something. He pointed down at the floor. Stop for a moment. There are monsters here. Kettle peered around, I do not see anything. But Kassan indicated the scattered fragments on the ground. Do you see those bones lying around? Those are skeletal soldiers. Step 1 wrong move, and they will rise and attack. He muttered under his breath, criticizing the guard, that damned captain must have known everything. This dungeon is not a test of sincerity, it is a tool to eliminate outsiders from the start. Kettle remained thoughtful, eyes narrowing. Skeletal soldiers. Kassan continued analyzing the situation. These skeletal soldiers are not weak. Even if their bodies are damaged or their limbs cut off, they can still move and fight. Their defense is surprisingly tough since they are made of bones. This dungeon is far more difficult than I anticipated. He then turned to the priest. Get your divine power ready. He glanced at the 2 others. Old man, prepare your shield. Kettle, get ready as well. I will aim for any openings during the fight. Kassan emphasized again, even if their bodies are destroyed, they keep moving. Aim for the weak points, the neck. They are incredibly durable, so it will take multiple strikes to take one down. Kettle nodded approvingly. A skilled strategist, you have got it. Understood. Just as he stepped forward, the dry skeleton at his feet twitched. Kettle's eyes widened slightly in surprise. The skeletal soldier slowly rose, gripping a sword and fixing its gaze on the group. Seeing the skeleton move, the other 3 except Kettle instinctively took defensive stances. But just as they were about to charge, Kettle signaled for them to hold their positions. Despite its brittle, rickety form, the skeletal soldier dashed forward to attack, undeterred. Without a word, Kettle threw a powerful punch straight at the skeletal soldier's head. After striking it barehanded, he held his stance, his face showing genuine surprise. The skeletal soldier, struck squarely by the blow, disintegrated into a cloud of dust at Kettle's feet. Seeing this, the other 3 froze, their faces pale with shock. Kettle turned to Kassan, beaming. Kassan, you were right, just smashing the head renders them immobile. Kassan internally groaned in protest. That is not exactly what I meant. Skeletal soldiers are creatures formed entirely of bones, and their bones are incredibly dense and unusually tough. Even a seasoned swordsman, without precise control over their aura, could hardly slice through a vertebra with a single strike. On top of that, these skeletons were reinforced by the dungeon's magic. The conventional way to destroy them was to relentlessly strike the neck, like chopping down a tree. Snapping each vertebra, blowing the head off and reducing it to dust like this. It was utterly impossible. Witnessing Kettle's power firsthand, Kassan silently marveled. From the first meeting, he knew Kettle was strong, but this was on another level entirely. Doubt flickered in his mind, is he really human? Kettle, brimming with excitement, said to the group, all right, let us keep moving. The three others responded in unison, yes, understood. Take it easy, we do not need to rush, Kettle added cheerfully. Kassan hurriedly replied, yes, sir. The priest and paladin, however, silently lamented, I do not want to die here. As they advanced deeper into the dungeon, more skeletal soldiers came into view. The dry bones still lay motionless on the cold ground. A voice called out, Kettle. Suddenly, the skeletal soldiers began to stir one by one. The priest gasped, skeletal soldiers. She yelled again, panic rising, this time it is real, they're coming. Kettle spoke quietly to the others, I need a favor from you all. The three responded immediately, yes. Kettle stated firmly, let me handle these skeletons myself. There are a few things I want to observe. Kassan agreed instantly, understood, go ahead. The priest nodded as well, I agree. Thanks, Kettle replied concisely. He stepped forward toward the skeletal soldier, slowly raising its sword. The remaining three watched tensely, unsure what he intended to do. Kettle eyed the skeleton and called out excitedly, interesting. What kind of structure do you have here? As soon as he finished, the skeleton swung its sword to strike him. Calmly, Kettle caught the blade between two fingers, holding it effortlessly without a hint of strain. As Kettle twisted the skeleton's sword, he probed it, his voice teasing, so, what do you plan to do now? Immediately, the skeletal soldier backed up. It then leapt onto a nearby raised stone, adopting a defensive stance. Finally, it lunged forward, aiming to bring its sword down on Kettle's head. Despite its carefully calculated strike, Kettle dodged effortlessly. He then grabbed hold of the skeleton's armbone. The moment he secured it, a gleeful smile spread across his face. Kettle taunted the skeletal soldier, his tone challenging. How do you plan to handle this? No sooner had he spoken than the skeleton's arm dropped to the ground. Kettle glanced at his own hand, momentarily surprised. The skeleton stared blankly at its lost arm, eyes widening in confusion. Then, it glared at Kettle, attempting to regain its sword using the remaining arm bone. Kettle chuckled, so you can switch arms after all, huh? The skeleton immediately lunged again. Kettle swiftly seized its remaining arm bone, yanking it clean from the creature's body. The skeleton recoiled, then recklessly charged once more. Even as it closed the distance, Kettle remained perfectly composed, showing no hint of fear. He grabbed its arm once more, this time lowering his voice with a mocking tone, you can even change positions. Your intellect is not so low after all. The priest froze, terror-stricken, unable to utter a word. The other two began trembling in place, stunned. Watching Kettle's overwhelming combat prowess, the group could no longer conceal their astonishment. It was clear now he truly was a man-D. Kettle's eyes gleamed, a terrifying smile spreading across his face. Kassan Hark watched in horror, his face paling at the sight. The grotesque skull clattered to the stone floor, tiny motes of light still hovering around it. Kettle's eyes, wide and feral, tracked every movement of his prey with intense focus. Without wasting a moment, he lifted one leg, clearly aiming at the skull. So, you can still move even with just your head, huh? The air seemed to still, heavy with tension, only broken by Kettle's elongated, intrigued voice, interesting. Once the situation was settled, Kettle turned to the others with a bright smile. Have you all been waiting long? Sorry to keep you. Kassan Hark jumped slightly, immediately tensing. No, whatever you want to do is fine. Although Kettle did not fully understand, he nodded awkwardly. Thanks. He quickly pivoted and resumed his steps. Cheerfully taking the lead, Kettle announced, "All right then, let us move on." The other three did not dare make a sound, hastily replying, "Yes." After walking for an uncertain stretch, Kettle suddenly froze. All four stopped, the forward motion halted. Casson opened his mouth, uncertain. "This is." Kettle's gaze fell to the staircase extending downward, and he continued Casson's thought, "Second floor." After another long pause, the group cautiously followed, staying close together. Casson Hark suddenly removed his half-face mask and exhaled deeply. He hesitated before speaking to Kettle, who had just turned around. "Maybe we should rest for a moment." Kettle thought for a moment, stroking his chin. "You are right, a short break would be good." Casson immediately expressed his gratitude with a quick bow. "Thank you." Time passed, and the scene shifted. Kettle sat cross-legged, arms folded, eyes closed, resting in silence. Across from him, Casson, Priest Hayes, and Paladin Alessandro Tyrannus sat awkwardly, unsure of what to say. Suddenly, Kettle broke the silence. "I have a few questions about this dungeon." Priest Hayes blinked in surprise. "Yes." Kettle smiled warmly at her. "It is embarrassing. I actually do not know much about this place." Priest Hayes, flustered and slightly panicked, replied, "No, wanting to learn is commendable. I do not know that much either, but—" Kettle responded politely, "Thank you." Her eyes widened in curiosity as she watched him, sensing his questions. He stroked his chin thoughtfully, reflecting on the nearby villages and wondering aloud, "This dungeon is quite close to the territory. So does that mean there is no issue with the dungeon or its monsters?" Priest Hayes explained carefully. "Basically, the monsters inside the dungeon won't spread beyond it. Of course, there are exceptions, but those cases are always controlled and handled beforehand." Casson Hark cleared his throat softly, adding, "Dungeons are naturally occurring phenomena, sometimes caves, sometimes towers. Most appear near areas where people gather." From their explanations, Kettle began to understand why this dungeon existed in the first place. Priest Hayes continued to analyze. "When a dungeon appears, the territory will first assess its danger level. Then we outsiders, mercenaries, or guards handle it." Hearing this, Kettle's lips curled into a sudden smile, letting out a soft "oh." He pondered further. "So that means within the territory itself, there would not be any dungeons?" Priest Hayes quickly answered, not wanting to leave him waiting. "No. Dungeons only appear within a certain distance, away from places where people live." Kettle nodded, understanding. "I see." His expression brightened. "If it is a dungeon, then there must be rewards for conquering it, right?" She propped her chin on her hand, thinking of the skeletal boss and treasure. "Exactly. Usually, there is a boss on the final floor, and defeating it grants various rewards. For a dungeon of this scale, the loot should not be bad at all." Half of Kettle's face was shrouded in shadow, leaving only a smile on his lips like something out of a game. Curious, Priest Hayes asked, "A game?" Kettle, realizing he would spoken aloud, quickly replied, "I was just muttering to myself." He quickly changed the topic. "I have one more question." Priest hesitated slightly. "Yes, go ahead." Kettle asked unexpectedly, "Who created this dungeon?" Her mind filled with question marks. She looked at him, bewildered. What? She did not understand why Kettle would ask such a thing. Dungeons appeared naturally, no one created them. Kettle felt something was off, as if someone's hand was manipulating everything behind the scenes. It seemed too suspicious. First, they always appeared near populated areas, as if deliberately placed to be tested. Images of a serpent coiling around a red apple flashed through his mind. He added silently, "They appear near people, enticing them with great rewards." He looked at everyone seriously. "I think this has more of an artificial design than a natural phenomenon." Priest Hayes flinched at his words. "That actually makes sense." She touched her chin, thinking quietly. She had never considered it, taking it as a natural law all along. Even Casson Hark went silent, doubting his own assumptions. He thought, "I have never questioned it. I never even suspected. It seemed like an absolute truth. Could it be that this man D is seeing through something I have taken for granted?" He glanced downward, recalling the common notion that man D were a simple, brutal species. The terrifying image of a predator watching its prey with a single eye rose in his mind, cold, merciless, unchanged. Even Kettle's mere outwardly fearsome presence added to Kassan's growing suspicion. If what I know is correct, could this man D really just be an ordinary man D? As these thoughts swirled, Kettle's voice suddenly cut through his musings. This is truly fascinating. He nodded and smiled at everyone. Everyone, have you rested enough? The three of them jumped, quickly standing. Yes. Kettle cheerfully led the way forward, signaling for them to follow. All right, then, let us continue, he said, and Kassan quickly responded, yes. After moving forward for a while, the four continued cautiously, eyes scanning their surroundings. Kettle calmly led the way, with Kassan and Tiranu each covering a side, while Priest Hayes stayed close behind. Suddenly, Kettle paused slightly, his eyes narrowing as if he had spotted something. He noticed a locked chest. What is that? He muttered. Kassan quickly explained. It is a treasure chest, one of the rewards from the dungeon. If you manage to open it, the treasure inside is yours. He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking inwardly, easier said than done. To open a high-tier chest like this requires a master thief, someone with fully honed lockpicking skills. But if someone had reached that level, they probably would not need to risk themselves in this dungeon at all. Too bad. We will probably have to skip this chest. But Kettle's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. Kassan, open it. Kassan froze, unable to believe what he would just heard. What the hell? Kettle looked at the locked chest with excitement, seemingly oblivious to Kassan's shock. A treasure chest is naturally a thief's job. That is why I asked you to do it. I want to see a thief's skill with my own eyes. Kassan closed his eyes again, thinking, that is true. But there is a problem. He felt stiff as stone. If I could do this, why would I even be here? His jaw dropped. A lowly thief, not recognized by any guild. Where would I even have the skill to pick this lock? His mouth was open, but the words would not come out. I can't tell him the truth. Looking at Kettle's eager, bright expression, full of anticipation, Kassan felt trapped. If he admitted the truth, it would immediately shatter that excitement. The vision of Kettle flipping 180 degrees and staring coldly at him flashed through his mind. You, a thief, and you can't even do this, pathetic. Remembering the scene of Kettle stepping on the skull earlier, Kassan tensed. Internally, he screamed, though no one could hear him. He forced a smile and scratched his head, trying to appear calm. All right, I will give it a try. Sometime later, Kettle stood behind him, eyes sparkling with excitement as he observed Kassan closely. You are using that tool to pick the lock, interesting. Kassan's thoughts darkened, he is staring at me from behind. If I fail, I am as good as dead. Kassan's face twisted into an expression of utter frustration. He racked his memory, trying desperately to recall the skills he had once observed while following Kettle as a porter. Kettle, like a predator exuding an ominous violet aura of power, stood behind him, scrutinizing every subtle movement Kassan made, committing it to memory. Kassan sat there, sweat pouring down as if perched atop a blazing inferno, wagering his very life. Summoning every ounce of his thief's skill. He worked the lock, each twist and maneuver echoing like the anguished screams of a tormented soul. A flash of violet light flickered behind, causing the young man's face to pale, his eyes widening as if frozen in shock for a fleeting moment. Kettle's eyes went wide in astonishment, his broad shoulders trembling slightly beneath the thick fur cloak, his heartbeat thundering audibly in his chest as he faced the unexpected sight before him. Kassan Hark's eyes narrowed, his cheeks flushed, and tears glistened at the corners of his eyes. His lips curved into a small, bittersweet smile as he exclaimed, I did it. It is open. Priest Hayes' eyes sparkled as she looked ahead, her voice ringing out with delight. Really, I heard only master thieves could unlock such a treasure chest. I did not expect this firsthand. This is incredible. Kettle's gaze lit up with excitement, his fists clenched tightly and raised high as if to channel the overflowing joy surging within him. Is that so? Well done, Kassan. Kassan hesitated for a moment, replying softly, why yeah. His expression darkened slightly, and he forced a faint, self-conscious smile, hiding the inner turmoil in his heart. Doubts flickered across his eyes. Was this really possible? Just a glance, and he would done it. Incredible. He averted his gaze, lost in thought. For all his pride in his survival skills, this was the first time he had questioned himself. Had he truly ever given his absolute best? Kettle stood at the prow, arms crossed, peering down at the chest below. So, what is this worth, do you think? Priest Hayes followed his gaze and replied thoughtfully, With this, an average family could live lavishly for a whole month. Casson remained seated in the corner, overwhelmed, still frozen in place. Kettle smiled knowingly, understanding the answer without further explanation. I see. Accepted. Hearing Kettle call, Casson snapped back to attention. Casson, you handle the distribution of the rewards, all right? Why yes, sir, he replied, still tense. A silver goblet was raised, hovering near the golden chest as if someone wanted to examine its contents. Casson paused, holding the cup in his hands, staring at it with a mix of shock and concern etched across his face. A voice called out. Casson, his eyes widened in panic, cold sweat breaking across his pale face, hair whipping about. Kettle asked quietly, do you need help? Casson did not respond, only exhaling a long, relieved breath. Kettle noticed the hesitation and asked again, are you hurt? No, I did not do anything, Casson shouted, startling the others. The three remaining members watched, puzzled, as Kettle's strong, deliberate steps carried him forward. All three kept their faces impassive, eyes locked straight ahead. Suddenly, a warning came from someone. Wait, it was the skeletal warrior. The four froze in front of a scattered skeleton lying on the cold stone floor. Kettle counted the skulls lying before him, murmuring, 4 heads. I will handle 3. The others shivered in fear, their entire bodies trembling, though they forced themselves to maintain stern expressions. Kettle's violet eyes gleamed ominously, a sinister smile curling across his face. His gaze was icy, sharp enough to pierce his foes. The remaining one is yours, he said. Casson thought briefly, this is real combat. And quickly nodded, yes, sir. Paladin Alessandro Tyrannus and Priest Hayes echoed in unison, understood. Kettle's steps slowly carried him closer to the skeletal figures. Suddenly, the skull on the ground emitted a faint sound, its jaw moving slightly, and its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light. Casson felt a wave of tension. No matter how many times he looked, he could not shake the shock of seeing the skeletons reassemble themselves. One by one, the 4 skeletal figures fused back together, moving as if they were living beings. They rose to sit upright, faint blue lights flickering across their bones, leaving the 4 adventurers stunned. The skeletons surged forward as if to attack, roaring with chilling intensity, their jaws gaping wide to intimidate. Kettle immediately issued commands. Everyone, Paladin Alessandro Tyrannus, start channeling your magic. Priest Hayes, mutter your incantations. Casson, prepare to strike. He shouted sharply, move out. The 4 skeletons lunged forward. Casson stepped in front of them, thin wisps of gray smoke curling around him. With a swift, circular swing, he sent a streak of golden light flying across one skeleton's face. The 2 skeletons behind looked at each other in confusion, while another collided comically with an unseen object, its expression one of sheer panic. Kettle scooped up 3 of the skeletons in his arms and whispered softly, now. This is rare, do not break anything. Leaning down, he murmured to the 3 bones, I will take care of you. A frail skeleton on the side raised its sword high, ready to strike. The blade shot forward in a wide arc aimed at Paladin Alessandro Tyrannus, but he swiftly lifted his shield. The force pressed hard against the shield, testing his defense, and he tensed, his eyes sharp as bullets. Suddenly, something sprang up from the ground with terrifying force. Casson leapt, attacking from behind with a sharp dagger, but the noise drew the skeleton's attention. He flailed his arms and legs, flipping the skeletal warrior onto its back. Priest Hayes' gaze fixed on a point ahead. Her hand glowed with golden red light as she cried, Shadow Illusion. The spell caused Paladin Alessandro Tyrannus to stagger. Almost collapsing, he knelt one knee, holding his radiant sword steady. The skeleton, affected by the magic, also collapsed, greenish smoke curling around its frame. Cracks began appearing along its bones, slowly spreading across its entire body. Once again, the skeleton tensed, enveloped in a haze of green smoke. Kettle let out a satisfied chuckle. Ha ha. He stood there laughing mid-air, legs planted on 2 skulls, arms clutching the other two heads in self-satisfaction. He could not believe he was witnessing such a textbook formation in action. Truly rare, he added with a grin. His powerful fists shattered the surrounding atmosphere, and he extended a hand to catch the airborne shards, smiling. Now that the obstacles are cleared, let us enjoy this. Golden light flashed as his sword sliced through the air with a razor-sharp arc, cutting straight into the skeletal figure. The clash echoed harshly through the dim space. Cassin's thoughts raced. No doubt about it, this man was a wild force. The eyes of Priest Hayes and Paladin Alessandro Tyrannus reflected a mix of awe and apprehension, sweat still clinging to their brows. He is testing us, they realized. The skeletal faces looked almost comical, their round eyes and gaping mouths frozen in confusion. One skeleton knelt on the ground, clutching a knee, its expression a mixture of bewilderment and fear. The faces of the group were flushed with intensity, some murmuring spells, others brandishing daggers, and a few swinging swords toward the skeletal warriors. They knew that revealing even the slightest weakness could be fatal. Streaks of light cut through the dense darkness, each slash illuminating the black void. The skull lying quietly on the cold stone floor still emitted a faint bluish-white glow. Kettle crouched to the ground, creating a resounding thud. The others followed suit, sitting silently, and for a moment, the air grew thick and oppressive. Kettle sat in thoughtful silence, not in doubt but in observation. The fighters from the snowfield had proven themselves capable, and he noted this quietly. 3 skeletal warriors appeared once again, grinning with menacing, almost comical jaws. These level 3 monsters were also bone constructs. And their numbers had increased, but under Kettle's leadership, they had been overcome without incident. With a lightning-fast motion, Kettle struck them with tremendous force. Priest Hayes watched in silence, her gaze filled with awe. She clutched her hands lightly to her chest, as if summoning the resolve to act. Cassin stood facing Kettle, eyes sharp and expression serious, studying him intently. In the deepest chamber of the dungeon, the silhouette of a knight clad in dark armor sat motionless amidst the cold mist, gripping the hilt of his sword as though guarding a secret buried deep within the dungeon. On the icy steps, the black-armored knight remained still upon a throne, weak firelight glinting off the scratched armor. The intruders stood silently at the foot of the stairs, barely daring to breathe. This was a skeletal knight, a formidable caged warrior. Priest Hayes shivered, panic flaring in her eyes. I can't believe something like this exists here. Kettle raised a brow in curiosity. Different from the ones before. Yes, she emphasized, it is incredibly strong, far stronger than the others. Red, fiery eyes glowed from the hollow sockets of the skeletal knight. Encircled by spiraling purple auras, he held a cold steel sword to his chest. Priest Hayes' eyes widened in shock, her breath caught in her throat. A single strike from this skeletal knight could easily overwhelm any opponent not at the level of a knight. This was no ordinary monster. Defeating it and surviving to return was far from guaranteed. She added, there will be an investigation. If the reasons are justified, then we won't face any trouble. A faint smile of satisfaction appeared on Kettle's lips. Priest Hayes, still uneasy, called to him, and he replied calmly, makes sense. The skeletal knight slowly levitated into the air, the purple maelstrom of energy coiling around him, sword poised, ready to strike. The skeletal knight's eyes blazed with a fierce red glow, a sinister smile curling across his face as he stared down at them. He stood atop the steps, gripping his long, imposing sword, and locked his gaze on Kettle, who remained parallel to him below. Kettle muttered under his breath, a skull can maintain its form. Interesting. At once, the skeletal knight raised his sword high and lunged forward. His body crouched for the attack. For a brief moment, the onlookers froze, faces revealing a mix of confusion and anxiety, sensing something off. Danger radiated from the knight. Priest Hayes screamed, conjuring a magical shield to intercept the skeletal knight's strike. The golden shield cracked under the force, the knight's dark magic pushing back steadily. Pain contorted her face, breaths coming in short, ragged gasps, yet her golden eyes gleamed with determination through the swirling dust and overwhelming pressure. The shield shattered into pieces, but by sheer luck, Paladin Alessandro Tiranu had raised his own shield just in time to deflect the blow. Priest Hayes cried out in alarm as purple smoke spiraled from the impact, causing a few to instinctively step back, their breaths heavy, eyes tense, witnessing the raw force that had swept across the battlefield. Kettle glanced back, letting out a low exclamation of awe. Paladin Alessandro Tiranu's face was slick with sweat, his mind racing. Could a single strike truly carry such force? The skeletal knight's massive frame made every attack enormous, and Alessandro feared the overwhelming power. The knight's expression became inscrutable, almost infinitely enigmatic. Standing on the stone floor, baring his teeth in a menacing grin, his cloak flared with the wind, and the purple haze surrounding him added to the terrifying spectacle. Kettle, one eye closed, observed him silently. His gaze sharpened, growing dangerously intense. The skeletal knight lunged at Kettle, who responded with a single, powerful punch. The knight staggered sideways, landing awkwardly, his expression bordering on comical in its dazed confusion. The three onlookers were frozen, eyes wide and mouths agape, utterly speechless. Kettle clapped his hands together, brushing off dust, and smirked lightly. "That is all you have got," he murmured. He stood motionless in the frigid void, muscles tensed, eyes narrowing as he faced the overwhelming presence before him. For a moment, his gaze widened in surprise, as if encountering something completely unexpected. Then he called out, "Kassan." At the sound, Kassan looked up and replied, "Yes, yes." A neatly placed treasure chest sat on the stone step, locked with a golden mechanism. Kettle asked softly, "Can you open it?" Kassan's face twisted in panic. "No. Impossible. It is protected by a high-level lock. I do not have the skill to open it." Kettle's expression fell slightly. "I see. That is unfortunate." Kassan sighed, disappointed. "Yeah, it is a shame, but we will have to leave it." Before he could finish, Kettle used his own strength, delivering a mighty blow to the chest. Kassan's eyes went wide, his jaw dropping in utter astonishment. The wooden chest shattered violently, dust and smoke billowing upward. Everyone fell silent, staring at the contents inside. The two onlookers were frozen, eyes bulging, mouths agape, horrified and awestruck by what they saw, something beyond imagination. Kettle smiled confidently, clenching his fists, feeling the power surge through him. The chest contained piles of silver coins. Exactly as expected, but the real reward will be even greater. Kassan, take care of it. Kassan quickly nodded. "Yes, sir." Kassan slowly stepped toward the wooden chest, pondering how someone could just smash it open, something he had never seen in his life. His face twisted into an expression that was hard to describe, a mix of amazement and mild frustration. He could not help but think, if he could just break it like that, then why even ask me to unlock it? In front of the three others, a massive doorway appeared, bathed in blinding light that spilled outward. Small chunks of rock tumbled from the cliff above. Kettle turned his head toward the right crevice. Behind them, several boulders shifted, making the ground tremble as though an earthquake had struck. Kassan glanced sideways, his expression calm but eyes alert, letting out a quiet breath as if confirming a thought. Once a dungeon was fully cleared, it would vanish, so there probably would not be any hidden rooms this time. Hearing this, Kettle asked, "Hidden rooms? They really exist?" Kassan replied, "Rarely, but they do exist." Kettle smiled, his expression light and cheerful. "That is interesting," he said. Kassan looked puzzled, clearly not understanding what he meant. The captain of the guard leaned against a table with one hand, the other relaxed at his side, his face reflecting surprise. "What did you say? It is done already?" he asked quietly. Sunlight fell across the empty city walls. A faint cough broke the quiet, cutting through the heavy summer heat. "Ahem," he added, hesitating before asking, "So, how was the dungeon?" Kettle gave a thumbs up and answered enthusiastically. "It was fun." The captain's expression sank slightly, and he stammered, I see." He gestured for everyone to follow him. "Then let us proceed with the city entry formalities. Everyone, come along." Priest Hayes froze for a moment, her face showing a mixture of confusion and anxiety. "No major problems?" she asked. The warden queried, "Do you think that man-demon could remain in the territory?" She rested her chin on her hand, thinking, and after a long pause, replied hesitantly, "I think it should be fine," her voice hinting at her lingering doubts whenever she mentioned him. The captain frowned, deep in thought. Conquering a dungeon was not the problem. It was the process. The true purpose was to identify dangerous individuals. Kasan spoke confidently, he is not the type to cause trouble. The captain later met privately with Paladin Alessandro Tiranu for further questioning. Alessandro folded his arms and considered carefully. He is strong, like a monster, but he won't harm anyone. Truly different from a regular man-demon. Kettle crossed his arms, praising, Kasan did really well. As a thief, he disarmed the traps and even attempted to unlock the chest. Alessandro is a powerful frontline warrior. And Hay's prayers supported us greatly. Kasan nodded. Ah, I see. Alessandro continued recounting the events, but the captain's expression grew more complicated. He thought it strange. Usually, when strangers are forced to form a team to conquer a dungeon, they would not be praised this much. A bead of sweat rolled down his cheek as he finally said, very well. You are allowed to enter. The captain reminded them, even though you are permitted, if you cause trouble, you will be expelled. Be careful. Kettle nodded in acknowledgement. Understood. Someone brought over a cloth bag. Here, this is your reward for conquering the dungeon. Everyone can take a share, they said. Kettle pondered for a moment, thinking that the guards might just take it themselves. He grabbed the bag and spoke up, thank you very much. Surprisingly, this time, it seemed like they would not interfere. Turning to the others, Kettle suggested, let us divide it evenly. Kasan blinked in surprise. Huh. The three others all declined the reward. Ah, no, it is not necessary. Me neither. Kettle persisted. But we all work together, so we have to share the reward. You can't refuse. Kasan scratched his head and replied, ah. All right, then. Kettle grinned and continued, well then, let us go celebrate. Let us see if there is an inn nearby. The three of them collectively exclaimed, huh, what? Then they all burst into laughter. The atmosphere instantly lightened after the friendly teasing and invitations. Celebrate, ah, yes, ha ha. For a moment, the three just stood there, overwhelmed by emotion, tears welling up. Mom, I just want to go home, they thought silently. Kettle strode forward joyfully through the open gates, leaving behind the gloomy shadows of despair. The captain watched their retreating figures, contemplating silently. A single man-demon just punched and killed a skeletal knight, strong as a beast. Before him stood a tall man holding a sword, facing the sturdy figure of a young man whose strength rivaled that of a knight. This was clearly no ordinary man-demon, he was a legendary one. An abnormal individual. The captain's legs froze in place. He frowned, issuing orders with a hint of frustration in his eyes. I will report this to the Lord. Guard the gate. From behind came the response, understood. A massive, grand castle rose ahead, its interior adorned with luxurious furnishings. The captain stationed himself at the entrance, hands folded over his chest, bowing respectfully. Luke Barkhan, he called. Please, enter. Luke Barkhan's expression remained unreadable. What is the matter? The captain's gaze was sharp enough to pierce through the man before him. His voice was steady, but a high level of alertness shone through. Reporting to your lordship, I am the captain of Security Unit 1. A man-demon has entered the territory. The scene outside the palace looked even more magnificent under the moonlight. Inside, it was the lavish decor that truly left everyone in awe. Suddenly, Luke Barkhan spoke up. You have given him permission already. The captain of the guards confirmed, yes, sir. That is correct. It is not a major issue. Luke did not quite understand what the captain meant. Then what is the problem, he asked. The captain had no choice but to speak plainly. He is far too strong. Strong enough to become a problem on its own, sir. Luke was never quick to trust anyone, and hearing the guard recount the events how this man-demon had defeated a skeletal knight with a single punch made him uneasy. His eyebrows nearly shot upward in surprise. Skeletal knights. He imagined its form a monstrous creature impossible to handle unless one was at a knight's level, and yet this man-demon had defeated it in a single blow. In Luke's mind, man-demons were usually simple-minded, brutish beings relying on sheer strength to solve everything. Sweating profusely, he thought, could he really be top tier? He did not dare confirm it outright. It was possible, but Luke Barkhan remained cautious, aware that the man-demon could be even stronger than described. The captain of the guards was equally at a loss, unable to determine the full extent of the threat. A warrior of that caliber, and a man-demon at that, a race that worships strength as truth, posed a serious headache. Yet Luke had a plan, a different approach entirely. For now, he decided to summon the man-demon directly. He was bewildered by the order he had to carry out. Will this be safe? Luke had already calculated his course of action. Allowing such a powerful being to roam the territory was reckless, but he felt that meeting him directly would provide clarity. The captain remained uneasy, worried about the danger. Luke, however, was fully confident in the fortress defenses. I have my knights. He blinked slightly at the announcement from the Lord, then turned to ask his knight, what do you think? The knight assessed the situation instinctively. He is strong, yes, but he is just a man-demon, a muscle-bound brute with no real intellect. The Lord's knight was supremely confident in his own abilities. Against my sword techniques, taught directly by the Sword Saint, he does not have the level yet. Luke nodded, satisfied with the assurance. He then ordered the captain, call the man-demon. I will speak to him directly. At the dining table, a variety of dishes were laid out. Kettle happily took a bite of a chicken leg, savoring it thoroughly, leaving only a few drops of sauce at the corner of his mouth. Everyone else could not help but be astonished at Kettle's voracious appetite. The room fell silent. Paladin, Cassin, and priest could barely utter a word. Kettle slammed his cup down on the table. Only after finishing his meal did he speak, praising the food. This is good. The inn is nice, and I like the quiet atmosphere too. Today it is on me, so eat and drink freely. The priest laughed out loud, easing the tension. Kettle turned to the paladin. You are a holy knight, right? The paladin responded calmly, yes, sir. Curious about his power, Kettle asked, what kind of holy power do you wield? I did not see you use it during the dungeon raid. The paladin hesitated. I am still training, so my holy power has not awakened yet. Kettle's eyes widened in surprise. Oh, unlucky, he murmured. The paladin, embarrassed, did not say more. Kettle quickly shifted the topic. The deity you serve is Kalasha, right? Is there a temple nearby? The priest gave a vague excuse to decline. No, I do not think so. She is not exactly a welcome deity. She was well aware of the situation. Kalasha, the goddess of deceit and trickery, was widely hated and rejected. Unsure whether to ask further, the priest glanced at Kettle. Sir. Kettle, still focused on his meal, looked up slightly. What is it? The priest's question made both the paladin and Cassin startle. How strong is he exactly? Kettle, however, was still lost in the world of food, savoring each bite. I can't really define my own abilities. In terms of rank, I am not sure either. I have not been away from the snowfield for long, so I am honestly curious myself. Just how strong is a skeletal knight? He murmured. The priest's estimate was fairly accurate. At the very least, it would require a second-tier rank to handle him. But if it were a first-tier knight, they could defeat him just as Kettle had. Kettle remained modest. Then probably second tier, he said casually. The innkeeper's voice trembled slightly. Forgive me, sir. Kettle hoped the guests would understand. By the way, our shop will be closing soon, man-demon. He urged everyone to get going. My apologies, let us be off. Kettle asked about their plans. Do you have anything scheduled or any plans coming up? Both the priest and paladin answered, loudly, yes, we do. Cassin, with equal confidence, nodded. Yes, we are really busy, actually. Kettle's eyes sparkled. I see. That is too bad. Then I guess we part ways here. I hope to meet you again someday. Yet, all three of them shared the same thought silently. No need to meet again, goodbye then. Kettle's feet sank into the soft, welcoming bed. He smiled, blissfully happy. Wonderful. Is this the first time I have actually slept on a bed since coming to this world? The innkeeper was shocked, realizing Kettle had stayed at the inn thanks to the dungeon rewards, without causing much trouble. Kettle felt more alive than ever. Compared to the snowfield, this place was paradise. Lost in his own thoughts, he reflected, it had taken quite some time since waking in the snowfield to find civilization. So, what should I do now? I want to experience more, to feel more. He felt the pull of adventure. I want a journey, to visit the sacred grounds of the elf clan. Other intentions still lingered in his mind, the magic tower, the capital city. He closed his eyes to let his mind rest. Sunlight streamed through the window. Kettle awoke, still slightly drowsy, quickly wiping the remaining drool from his mouth. Even early in the morning, the captain of the guards had arrived to see him. "Did I wake you? My apologies." Kettle wanted to know the reason for his visit. "Captain, what brings you here?" The captain cleared his throat to prevent his voice from cracking. He had come to deliver a message. The Lord wanted to meet him directly. Kettle could hardly believe his ears. "The Lord, the ruler of this land, the master of the entire territory, wants to meet me." Without hesitation, he immediately agreed. "Understood." Kettle wanted a moment to prepare before leaving. "Should I go now? Let me just get dressed and I will leave right away." The captain of the guards glanced at him, slightly skeptical. Just like that. Sunlight poured into every corner of the streets. Now Kettle could truly feel the lively atmosphere of the marketplace. When he first arrived in this territory, it had already been dark, so he had only caught a brief glimpse. Observing it in daylight, however, was genuinely impressive. He thought to himself that life here seemed peaceful. Kettle even gave a thumbs up internally. If this is the lucky fantasy type of world, then I welcome it anytime. He also noted the absurdity of his situation, muttering, "What in the world is happening to me?" The captain of the guards forced himself to stay patient, knowing his duty demanded efficiency. Time was limited, they needed to return to the palace quickly. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the palace. "I have brought the man-demon here, my lord," the captain reported. Luke Barkan, standing at the entrance, instructed the guards, "Let him in." Kettle stepped inside the grand hall. Luke extended his hand toward him. "It is a pleasure to meet you, man-demon." Introducing himself succinctly, Luke said, "I am Luke Barkan, lord of this territory, the Barkan region of the Gayanthra kingdom." Kettle bowed slightly in respect. "It is an honor to meet you, Lord of Barkan. I am Kettle, a man-demon." Luke's eyes nearly bulged out in shock at this action. He could hardly speak. A man-demon. Shaking hands. He struggled to maintain his composure. Man-demons never shook hands. Strength was everything to them, without exception. "I have lived long enough to see a lot, but this." Quickly, Luke adjusted his demeanor. "It seems he has learned some basic etiquette. Sit down." Kettle took a seat across from him in the lavish chamber. The palace interior was starkly different from the outside, adorned with gleaming gold and intricate decorations. Kettle was taken aback, realizing just how magnificent a lord's castle truly was. Even in a fantasy world, the castle bore an unmistakable medieval look. His gaze fell on a figure ahead, a knight guarding the lord. Kettle's childhood wish had come true. He had always loved role-playing games as a knight, and now he was seeing a real-life knight. It was incredible, exactly as he had imagined. He noticed someone watching him. The Lord's knight seemed overcautious, radiating a deadly aura, always scrutinizing others. The knight's presence exuded palpable threat. That is real killing intent. No mistake. How dare he show this aura in front of the Lord? Without fully understanding the situation, the knight had already moved to draw his sword. "Foolish. You won't leave here alive if you do that." Kettle listened patiently as Luke spoke. "The reason I summoned you is simple. I bear no ill will. I just need to confirm a few things about you." Kettle folded his arms. "Very well. What would you like to confirm?" Luke still found it hard to believe Kettle was a man-demon. "Where do you come from?" Kettle gave a long, meandering reply that lacked focus, unaware that this was precisely what mattered. "I come from the coldest place in the world, a land blanketed entirely in white snow." Luke's eyes narrowed, already guessing the truth, the snowfield. Ever cautious in thought, he now realized this was the legendary man-demon warrior standing right before him. Yet still, doubts lingered. Unbelievable. Kettle did not know how to explain. "It is a harsh place. Believe it or not, that is up to you." Luke wanted more information. "Then let me ask you something else." He was even more tense than Kettle. "Just how strong are you?" Luke needed an answer to plan accordingly. What mattered most was how dangerous this man-demon's power truly was. Kettle spoke the truth. "The question is wrong. I do not know the standards for strength outside my world." Luke, realizing there was no other way to gauge it, understood. He turned to the knight. He did not need to ask again. Luke's meaning was clear. He would test Kettle's strength another way. "Do you wish to spar with one of my knights? If you agree, I will make sure you are rewarded fairly." Kettle did not quite grasp what was happening. A duel. Luke's tone carried anticipation. Of course, it won't be a deathmatch. I trust you will keep it within limits. Kettle smiled brightly. Sounds good to me. The calm, composed demeanor of Kettle startled Luke. A duel with a knight he had only wished for a glimpse of combat, and now it was happening before his eyes. Not just any knight, but a knight of this fantasy world, possessing magic and aura, a chance to witness true combat skill. Luke could not help but grip the armrest tightly. Still, he maintained his preconceptions. Indeed, a man-demon was a man-demon. Politeness aside, the wild, battle-loving nature remained unchanged. Both Luke and the Lord's Knight sensed the killing intent emanating from Kettle. The arena came into view. Luke sat, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. Kettle and the knight stepped onto the field. The knight was deadly serious about the duel, while Kettle's face radiated energy and anticipation. Luke could not wait a single moment longer. Begin. Hopefully no one will shed blood unnecessarily. The attendant struck the bell immediately. The Lord's Knight sneered, voice dripping with arrogance. Consider it an honor to witness my swordsmanship, you lowly man-demon. Kettle ignored the insult. I am looking forward to this. Luke could not understand it. How dare he be so relaxed? The knight was already ready, exuding overwhelming skill. I will show you, he thought. Swiftly, he lunged forward. 3 sword blades appeared in an instant. It turned out he wielded a triple-bladed sword, 3 blades joined together. Kettle was momentarily taken aback at the sight. He had no time to react. The blades moved with incredible speed. The 3 green blades thrust straight at him all at once, making Kettle question his own eyes. Was this an illusion? His expression froze for a moment, but his body reacted instantly, dodging the strikes with lightning speed. No, this was not an illusion. The knight attacked relentlessly, yet not a single strike landed. A thought flickered through Kettle's mind. All 3 blades are real. This is swordsmanship. The man opposite him noticed Kettle's stunned face, yet could not land a hit. Indeed, the boy was extraordinary. The knight, exultant, laughed. You barely managed to dodge my sword, ha, even so, doing that is impressive. Kettle felt the victory already in his grasp. He could end the duel now, but there was no need to continue. Suddenly, his hand clenched and shot forward. His face revealed no emotion. With a casual flick of the wrist, the knight's triple-bladed sword shattered into pieces. The sudden, unforeseen move left the knight wide-eyed and speechless. What? Kettle gave him no chance to recover. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the knight, arm extended toward the man's chest. His hand gripped the knight's breastplate, veins bulging, forcing the solid armor to warp. With a powerful throw, the breastplate splintered into fragments, and the knight's body flew backward. He landed hard, mouth agape, seemingly unconscious. Luke Barkan's jaw dropped, eyes wide. What? The armored gauntlet fell slack to the ground. The knight had been thrown a considerable distance, slamming into a wall. Only a deep indentation remained in the ground, and the wall was caved in from the impact. Seeing his knight defeated by a single strike, Luke could hardly believe his eyes. In his mind, he reeled, just one blow, and a first-tier knight is down. What kind of terrifying power is this? Kettle stood with steady footing, smiling toward him. That is it, right? Luke Barkan remained silent, staring at him, stunned for a long while. Finally, he gathered himself and spoke slowly. Yes. In Luke's mind replayed the horrifying strike he had just witnessed. A man-demon capable of defeating a first-tier knight with a single blow. This was monstrous strength. At least at a superhuman level, and yet that was only the minimum. The full depth of this power was beyond measure. His expression grew grave. A man-demon with such strength could destabilize the balance of the world. A vision flashed in his mind, a heroic figure wielding a sword alongside a dragon. If that is the case, I should inform him, one of the few in this vast world who bears the title of Sword Saint. Luke Barkan bowed slightly, murmuring to himself, thoughtful and apprehensive. It is time for him to appear. I wonder if he will even be interested. Just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out, Are you speaking of me? Luke Barkan jumped, his gaze snapping toward the source of the voice. Sunlight and a gentle breeze flowed in through the open window. The thin, light curtain fluttered in the wind, and right there, standing calmly with arms crossed, was an old man in a blue robe, calmly observing him. Luke exhaled deeply. He glanced at the man who had appeared so suddenly in the room. His tastes are as strange as ever, he thought. The old man chuckled softly. Even humans need a little entertainment, do not they? It was none other than the sword Saint Cain. Arms still crossed, he spoke, so, why do not you tell me this interesting story of yours? Luke Barkan placed one hand on the table to steady himself and slightly bowed. It is truly an honor that you came despite my sudden notice. I am grateful to meet the great sword Saint Cain. Cain did not respond, only stared at him intently. Neither spoke further, and Luke remained in his bowing stance. Later, the scene shifted. The knight who had lost to Kettle lay in pain on a bed, trying to suppress his suffering. Suddenly, the wooden door opened. Luke, who had been standing inside the room unnoticed, spoke, making the knight jump. Are you feeling any better? Flustered, the knight struggled to sit up, clutching his wound. I will be fine in a few days. I sincerely apologize, my lord. Before Luke could respond, the figure behind him interjected, no, you should be the one apologizing to me. The sword Saint Luke Cain clasped his hands behind his back, calmly observing. My foolish disciple has fallen to an insignificant, unknown man-demon. The knight froze at Cain's presence. Master. Luke glanced down, noticing only a small tear in the knight's chest armor. The old man spoke matter-of-factly, not a single injury. Before arriving here, I saw the boy's armor completely shattered. Given the state of his armor, it would not be surprising if he had died. Yet his clothing is only lightly torn, and his body bears not a scratch. Could it be that this man-demon held back? Cain propped his chin on his hand, studying his disciple carefully. This was not an ordinary foolish man-demon. He was someone capable of controlling his power with precision. The knight hesitated, then responded, I understand. Cain's assessment was calm but firm. This man-demon's skill surpassed even the knight's level to such an extent that he could easily hold back if he wished. Finally, Cain delivered a conclusion that left both Luke Barkan and the knight wide-eyed in astonishment. At the very least, he was at a transcendent level. Luke opened his mouth hesitantly, He turned to Cain. Pardon my disrespect, but compared to you, Master Cain. Cain paused briefly, then replied, he is indeed strong, but I am the Sword Saint. Even if he possesses transcendent power, he cannot reach me. Luke exhaled with relief. Cain stroked his chin thoughtfully, yet I did not see him use any aura, and his power already reached that level. Cain's words left Luke marveling, eyes wide. Such power was impossible by conventional standards. This was the strength of a man-demon hailing from the frozen expanse. In Luke's mind, Kettle's figure appeared vividly. He reflected silently. At first, I did not believe it, but it seems he really is from the frozen expanse. Cain hummed thoughtfully, a man-demon from the frozen expanse. Within his thoughts, Kettle's gaze was intensely fearsome. Cain pondered deeply, the legend of a human surviving in the icy wastes. Was he truly human? Touching his beard, Cain suddenly muttered enigmatically, he is an anomalous being. With that, visions of monstrous creatures, reptilian beasts, gigantic bears flashed in his mind. Yet Cain immediately shook his head, dismissing the terrifying images. No, he murmured. Luke Barkan frowned, confused. The frightening visions of an anomalous being lingered in Cain's mind. He clarified to himself, if he were truly a monster, he would not have held back against humanity. I was mistaken. Still, one question gnawed at him: why the frozen expanse, and why at this very moment? Cain felt a sense of unease. Seeing the old man's pained expression, Luke asked, is something wrong? Cain brushed aside his doubts. Nothing. That can wait. Even the Emperor has his mysteries. Thinking of the armored soldiers before the snowy mountains, Cain felt his head ache, always demanding the strangest of things. He spun toward Luke. No need to worry about that now. Luke, a little confused, nodded. Understood. Cain's gaze remained fixed on him. That man-demon. He is still in our territory, correct? Luke answered honestly, yes. He said he would stay, so I suppose he will. Cain shifted his steps, face serious. Turning away, he added, I must confirm this myself. Outside the city walls, a voice rang out, what are you planning to do next? The captain of the Barkan guards was drenched in sweat, unable to reply. Kettle faced him calmly and said, "I suppose." Kettle recalled the day before when Lord Luke Barkan had handed him a small bag and said, "This is the reward for your match." He remembered the words clearly. Then decided firmly, "From now on, I won't interfere with your actions in my territory." Returning to the present, Kettle stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I do not have any concrete plans either, but it would be better to verify my status. Every time I enter a new territory, having to clear dungeons just to prove myself is too troublesome." Hearing this, the captain quickly offered a suggestion. "If you are concerned about that, there is a way you could have someone of high standing act as a protector, vouching for your identity. Or, if you want another option." He did not hesitate, quickly proposing, "You could become a mercenary." He went on to explain the benefits of joining the mercenary guild. If you accumulate achievements and gain recognition from the guild, your identity will be acknowledged as well. Yet he thought to himself, of course, mercenaries are just errand runners until they reach a certain rank. With this man-demon's power, finding a patron would be far easier. Kettle's eyes brightened. "Mercenary?" he asked, intrigued. "Is there really another way?" Images of mercenaries appeared in his mind, venturing into dangerous forests to hunt monsters, living the romanticized life of adventure. Mercenaries were specialists in handling perilous tasks, a living embodiment of a heroic fantasy world. Kettle's interest peaked. "Where do I go to become a mercenary?" The captain hesitated. There is a guild." Kettle's face lit up like sunlight. "Take me there." The captain of the guard froze, wide-eyed, and stammered, "Oh, okay." Kettle imagined people walking their own paths, mercenaries roaming the lands to carry out commissions. To some, they were symbols of romantic freedom. Yet in reality, mercenaries were at the bottom of society, a class for those whose status went unrecognized. Even skilled mercenaries sometimes panicked when facing terrifying monsters. Many died in unexplored dungeons, or were merely sacrificial lambs for dirty tasks. Thus, low-tier mercenaries were often rude, filthy, and loud. One such man in a blue shirt, enraged, threw a punch at the person across from him. "You bastard, how dare you touch me?" At the guild, the one struck could not block it and fell heavily backward. He quickly regained his composure, leaping up and yelling, "You want to fight?" The blue-shirted man, even angrier, shot back with a taunt, "Then come at me." Both sides charged recklessly. Their guildmates watched, giggling and betting on the outcome. "Hey, right one, I am betting on you. If you win, I am cashing in. Left one, you got this." They clashed violently, neither yielding, blood and fury in full force as each refused to admit defeat. The mercenary guild receptionist finally spoke up. "Rosa, how are the new recruits this time?" Rosa, the guild receptionist, sighed heavily. Hopeless. They are all weirdos." She recalled the new arrivals: Paladin, a madman claiming to be a holy knight; Kassan, a thief; and finally, Priest Hayes from Kalasha. The priest seemed decent. But the deity she served, not trustworthy at all. Rosa let out another tired sigh. The pink-haired receptionist beside her muttered, "I see. That is unfortunate." Inside, Rosa was frustrated. No one decent showed up, and the ill-mannered mercenaries spent all day brawling. Then her mind wandered to a fantasy. If only a prince on a white horse would appear to rescue me from this receptionist job. Suddenly, the door opened slowly. Rosa, lost in her thoughts and sorrow, jumped in surprise. Looking up, she saw a strange guest standing in front of her. Kettle. He stepped in, eyes sparkling with excitement as he took in the surroundings. "So this is the guild," he exclaimed. The two men who had been fighting paused, turning to look at the newcomer in disbelief. "No way. A man-demon." Others in the guild also froze, staring wide-eyed at Kettle. Yet Kettle entered with sheer enthusiasm, completely unbothered. He sat at a table, folding his arms confidently, and declared, "I am here to become a mercenary." Rosa froze, her face blanching, lips trembling. "Why you want to become a mercenary, may I ask your purpose?" Kettle replied calmly, "There are many reasons, but I heard that becoming a mercenary allows one's identity to be recognized." Rosa nodded slowly. "That is true. However, to have your status acknowledged through the mercenary path, you will need to achieve quite a lot. Are you okay with that?" Kettle's voice was resolute. "No problem." Rosa proceeded to register his information. "Then I will register you as a mercenary." The fee is 5 coins. May I have your name? Kettle placed the coins on the desk, speaking calmly, I am Kettle. My age? I am not sure. Rosa typed swiftly, murmuring, all right, I will approximate then. Soon after, she handed him a badge. Done. Your registration as a mercenary is complete. This is your mercenary badge. It is the symbol of a mercenary, do not lose it. Kettle stared at the badge, silent. Holding it in his hand, he looked at it intently, satisfied. I have been accepted. Excited, he asked, are there any missions available now? I want to start immediately. Rosa, a bit surprised, hesitated. Yes, missions. She handed him a board listing the current tasks. Kettle looked over it, puzzled. Wait, is this all? The board displayed only F-rank missions, gathering herbs, cleaning basements, scrubbing sewers, sweeping streets, and night patrols. Rosa forced a smile. For now, since you are an F-rank mercenary, these are the missions available to you. Inwardly, she felt apprehensive. Man-demons are proud by nature. What if he suddenly gets angry? Should I call for backup? She forced herself to explain. If you complete these simple tasks and accumulate achievements, you will be able to take on harder missions. Before she finished, Kettle pointed decisively. I will take this mission. Rosa stared at the mission board in disbelief. It turned out that Kettle had decided his very first task would be gathering herbs. She hesitated, asking carefully, are you sure? Kettle replied calmly, it is work that needs doing. Is not it? No problem. Rosa stammered, I see. Filled with excitement, Kettle asked, so, where can I find these herbs? Rosa handed him a picture. You will need to go outside the village. They look like this. Kettle quickly grabbed the image, nodding eagerly. Got it. I will be back soon. She stammered, why yes. Watching Kettle leave the guild with the herb picture in hand, his demeanor so relaxed and enthusiastic. Rosa froze, thinking, what is it with him? He seems so at ease. Finally, he opened the door and stepped out to begin his herb-gathering mission. Rosa remained stunned. Even though the pink-haired receptionist beside her tried to scare her into moving, it had no effect. Arriving at the forest, Kettle spotted a single herb flower. He compared it carefully with the picture on his paper. After a moment, he wondered to himself, does this herb heal wounds? It looks a little unusual. He took off his fur coat and laid it on the lush green grass. Adopting the posture of a peasant gathering herbs, he approached the task with enthusiasm. I have even prepared UV protective clothing. Let us begin my first mercenary mission. About an hour later, back at the mercenary guild, Rosa was stunned to see a large sack filled with the herbs Kettle had gathered. Kettle casually asked, is this enough? Rosa stammered, too much. Is he crazy? Is he trying to ruin the herb field or something? She thought. Then her eyes brightened. Looking at the herbs Kettle had collected, she realized they are in perfect condition. Most mercenaries just yank them carelessly, which ruins their value. Kettle felt a swell of pride. I am meticulous, after all. Rosa nodded in agreement. Yes, that is true. She handed him a coin. Thank you for your hard work, Kettle. Here's your reward for the mission, 1 coin. Kettle thought of the fragrant bread he could buy with it. The money was barely enough for the cheapest meal, yet it was the first coin he had earned through honest work. He could not help but feel thrilled and moved. Holding the coin, he quickly said, I am very satisfied. Can you assign me the next mission right away? Rosa froze. She stared at him, perplexed. What? How could a reward like this make someone so happy, this man-demon? Kettle's joy was childlike. It is still daylight, so I want to get as much done as I can. Rosa could not help but wonder, why is he so cheerful? Inwardly, she groaned. Good heavens, this new mercenary is just as bizarre as he is powerful. In the F-rank task board, the missions were listed one after another, herb gathering, basement cleaning, and public sanitation, all of which he had completed quickly. The remaining tasks, street sweeping, night patrol, and warehouse cleaning, caught Kettle's attention. He pointed firmly at the last mission, the warehouse cleaning, and decided, this time, I will take this one. Rosa silently reflected on his choice. After the herb gathering task, this was now his 3rd cleaning assignment. She glanced at Kettle, whose eyes shone like sunlight as they rested on her. Could it be that this man actually enjoyed cleaning? Not knowing what else to say, she stammered, all right, then. Take on this task. Moments later, he opened the door and stepped into the warehouse to begin his assignment. A girl wearing a white hat noticed someone entering and turned to look. With an excited and determined tone, Kettle announced, "I am here to clean the warehouse." The red-haired girl froze in shock, clutching a broom tightly in her hands as she stared at him. Calmly, Kettle asked, "Are you the owner of this warehouse?" She replied slowly, yes," though in her heart she could not hide her surprise. "A man D, here." He got to work, gently lifting a row of boxes with both hands. Cleaning the warehouse was straightforward, and he had no trouble moving the items inside. Next, Kettle picked up a broom and swept across the floor, sending dust into the throat of a nearby young man, making him cough. His following task would be sweeping the streets. Taking a broom in hand, he began to sweep. At first, controlling his strength was slightly tricky, but he managed without significant difficulty. At that moment, while Kettle diligently performed the street sweeping task, a man with binoculars observed him from a distance. The old man watched him for a while, puzzled. What on earth is he doing, he thought. Clearly, this was at least a superhuman-level being. Someone powerful enough to flatten an entire kingdom with just a punch. Seeing Kettle hidden behind that unassuming, gentle-looking face made it even more perplexing. In other words, if he revealed his power, he would be celebrated anywhere, but here he was, sweeping the streets like any ordinary worker. The old man saw him diligently sweeping back and forth, and it was clear that Kettle was putting his full effort into the task. Kettle worked meticulously, sweeping all the dirt into a dustpan. The old man had observed all of this and muttered in admiration, "He is taking this seriously. Wow." Lowering the binoculars, he stood from afar, staring at Kettle, unable to stop himself from wondering, "But why?" By then, he had finished cleaning everything thoroughly. He did not look tired at all, just casually wiped a few beads of sweat from his hands and, in a lightly exhilarated tone, exclaimed, "Ah, this feels amazing." The old man watching him could not understand it at all. Why does he look like he is actually enjoying this? He wondered. The next morning, the blazing sun had climbed high into the sky. Kettle woke up, stretching luxuriously and letting out a deep, satisfying yawn. He planted his feet firmly on the floor. Then, he suddenly noticed a rather large bag sitting on the table. He had not seen it there before. The bag looked heavy, and he had no idea what it contained. Inside, there were numerous coins. A female voice called out, cheerful and warm, "A smooth first day as a mercenary, Lord Kettle. This is your reward for completing 15 tasks." Kettle's eyes widened as he stared at the bag of coins. He picked it up, and Rosa, sitting across from him, smiled lightly and added, "That is 15 silver coins, sir." Unable to hide his excitement, his joy radiating across his face, Kettle said, "Thank you so much. I will return tomorrow." He smiled contentedly. This marked the beginning of his second day in town. Nearby, a little girl clutched her mother tightly, crying inconsolably. People around them froze, staring in amazement at someone. It turned out Kettle had just walked past, and his overwhelming presence had caught everyone's attention. While walking, he suddenly stopped. Something had caught his eye. "That is," he murmured. In the distance, a beautifully designed, intricately detailed building came into view, a library. Kettle knocked and entered. The librarian glanced at the visitor and softly greeted, "Hello." An eerie aura emanated from Kettle, causing the librarian to tighten her fists in fear, unable to speak. He lowered his voice and asked, "May I read the books here?" Kettle wandered among the bookshelves for a while, then selected a few volumes and sat at a table to read. He read intently, his expression clearly showing delight and curiosity. The librarian remained at her desk, quietly observing him. Even the old man who had been following Kettle's movements closely was astonished. "A man D reading a book. I can't believe this, but now I am certain. Even a man D from the frozen tundra has customs that differ from ordinary people." Kettle remained absorbed in reading, a gentle smile on his lips. Perhaps, the old man thought, this man D is truly unique. After a while, Kettle closed a history book and muttered softly, "So, the Empire finally won." Having read through everything, he pieced together a sequence of events. A few years ago, Mylena had traveled to the frozen tundra and promised to sell weapons to the kingdom in its battle against the Empire. Despite that, the Empire emerged victorious. Its flags were erected as markers of conquest. Now, the empire was supremely powerful, and the kingdom of Varkhan had effectively become a vassal state. A series of knights from this empire were always poised for brutal battles. The empire had swallowed up half of the human world and continued its expansion relentlessly. They feared no opponent and struck without hesitation, as if intent on devouring the entire world. Kettle raised a hand to his chin, muttering thoughtfully, "Conquering the world." Then his eyes lit up again, gleaming with curiosity about history. "All right, that is enough about humanity. Now, let us see what is more interesting." He pulled out a book about non-human races, eager to see what it had to say about various non-human species. Kettle flipped through each page, scanning it carefully. In his mind, he reflected on the book as a compendium of non-human creatures, a record of the fantastical. There were descriptions of a magnificent crystal-filled cave, truly existing in this world, the grandest cave in existence, filled with rare ores like gemstones. It also mentioned the dwarves' cavern, Mantiana. Further on, there was a fairy village, Pasarapia, its lush greenery making it a stunningly beautiful place. Then came the sky city of the angelic Lagamera, equally grand and magnificent, and finally, the unreachable sanctuary of the elves, Elfo Sagrado. This sanctuary had been shrouded in mystery for years. No one knew its location, and even the most powerful rulers had failed in countless attempts to find it. Kettle's eyes brightened with intrigue. So many must have tried to reach the elves' sanctuary. Suddenly, he widened his eyes as if he had stumbled upon something fascinating. He held the book close to his face, reading each word carefully. Wait, there are other areas like the frozen tundra. The book detailed places teeming with danger, demon regions, places that rejected human presence, filled with strange and terrifying phenomena. While numerous demon regions existed, 5 stood out for their vast scale. Next was an area enveloped in absolute silence, a tranquil forest where everything seemed frozen in place. Then came a scorching chasm, a pit of evil spreading malevolence across the land. Beneath the ocean lay a unique ecosystem, the deep sea, home to primates who breathed and survived in that abyss. Following that, there was a bottomless black hole surrounded by a ring of vibrant colors, the infinite black hole, a place devoid of anything. Finally, there was a land where snow fell year-round, inhabited by people shrouded in mysterious secrecy, the frozen tundra. Within these demon regions dwelled monstrous creatures known as incarnations of destruction. However, these domains could not breach human territories.